Welcome back to another great episode of The Human Mole. So, today we are going to talk about something that isn't really talked about when we dive into the merger and acquisition space, and that is people, right? So, I have amazing colleague with me, Brian Beverly, who is heavy in the procurement and supply chain industry and has done a lot of merger and acquisition integrations and is well versed on this side of the house when it comes to us wanting to focus on the people side of things and how that sometimes it's overlooked, but it's most importantly the most critical part of just ensuring after the M&A deal goes through that things kind of stand long term. So happy to have Ryan here. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm going to allow Ryan to give his background and some details on his experience for those of you all who aren't familiar with him. And then we're going to get into the nitty gritty of merger and acquisitions and how, it's affecting our people here nowadays.
And thanks, Tiana. So, a little bit about me. I have been in the procurement, supply chain, operations side of things for most of my career, both in the military and out of the military. And one of the things I learned in the military is your people are the most important thing that you have. And I took that with me to the corporate world. While I was with Clorox, I discovered the M&A world when I was pulled into some modeling projects and pretty quickly discovered that after acquisition, a company needed a lot of handholding and visibility from the parent company. That led to me looking for additional companies that were going through major upheavals or mergers and acquisitions, doing through mergers at a fairly large fleet management group, and finally to a mergers and acquisitions company in the pest control services arena. So I've been doing this for a little while. And the more that I do it, the more I realize that the people are at the core of this.
Very true. So this is what's going to get us into our nitty gritty today as we talk about the human side of mergers and integrating our people, the human aspect of things and not just systems. So I wanted to pick Ryan's brain around, okay, when we're going through M&A deals, that really is an image of like the financial models, right? And the due diligence but the culture and leadership really integrates into this and plays a big factor on the long-term success. So wanted to get your experience on, what it's been like on the human side of merger and acquisitions as you come seeing things through from start to finish.
The first thing that needs to work for a merger or acquisition work, the financials do have to line up. If it doesn't make the financial sense, it's going to fail and it's going to drag everybody down with that. Once the number crunchers get done with that and they start thinking about how would we do this, leadership needs to be really involved in determining how that's going to fit together, what their timeline is going to be, what's their messaging going to be, and start to assess their business structures. And you'll see a lot of companies try to touch on this by saying, okay, we've got similar departments here, and there may be some cross duplication of personnel, but we'll figure that out once we get there. And that's the wrong way to go about it, because the first thing that happens when you announce the merger and acquisition internally is that everyone gets worried. Where's my job going? Will I still be here in a year? What does this mean for me? Am I going to become redundant? Am I going to have to justify myself? And that worry and that fear really leads to a bad situation for starting off in any kind of M&A activity. So if you're in that situation, it is important for leadership to be very open and transparent about what they're doing. Hey, we're having these conversations. We're working out what it's going to look like. We will be communicating continually. For the first year, your job is secure. Don't worry about that. We're not making any major decisions now. And we're going to give you lots of warning when we do. So that's the point where I would start to inject that, is leadership having the conversations, getting that messaging right up front, and then the people who are involved, who will be affected by it, getting clear communication coming out of that.
Very true. So what's your opinion on how culture should really be assessed? I understand we all obviously want to be communicative early on and be fully transparent, which I mentioned in a lot of past episodes, that's what really employees are looking for now. But when you're reviewing culture, and maybe there could be someone that's a repeat naysayer, and you might need to make a change, how early on should that be assessed? But then also what to really look for if a company is thinking about, merger and acquisition, but feeling like maybe they might not have the right team to get that going.
Culture assessment is one of those things that you need to look at up front. there should be clear identification. I do recommend bringing in consultants to help with this, or an external assessment or survey service to do this, because understanding what the two companies' cultures are, even within the departments, your operations and sales teams will probably have very different cultures. But you need to see how well your leadership styles, your communication styles, all of these different pieces are going to fit together when you make these transitions. Are you going to have leaders who are going to butt heads? And if you have that situation, what are you going to do to address that? At some point from leadership, there has to be the messaging around, if you're not on board, then you need to find somewhere else to be. So get on board or let us know and we'll help you find a good transition plan. I've seen most of the companies that have gone through mergers and acquisitions not address that. They'd rather sort of ignore the problem until it becomes too big to ignore. And then they like to move people off to the side, and often they'll put them in special roles where they grumble. The problem is those people are still connected to everyone, and that negativity can really drag things down. I don't recommend building a blacklist up front. That sets a horrible tone. It creates the expectation or the perception from leadership that, hey, we're looking for this person to screw up. But they do need to be aware of where the potential conflicts might come from and be prepared to address that, because the change that's going to come with all of that is going to unsettle everything more. And if you have people dragging you down in the middle of change, it just takes a lot longer. It doesn't go well.
Very true. And so Ryan also hit on a really good point, and how I wanted to kind of pick his brain on how he would really assess or approach aligning leadership, the right leadership pre and post launch, right? And definitely hit the nail on the head with the fact that if someone is not like a team player, not really ready to get on board, or is really a naysayer, you need to get them off the bus early. Otherwise, they're just going to have continuous damage as time goes on. And so that's really good feedback that I wanted to also reiterate to everybody, is that as you're assessing the culture, even after an announcement happens, if you're hearing any type of negativity and if your leadership group isn't aligned, you really got to make a change quickly, because that does damage the acquisition, the merger as time goes on, and could cause heavy delays. I mean, I feel like I've seen that plenty of times where you have a great idea, you have a great project plan, but then there's someone who has said, we always done it this way, and they don't want to do it. And then it just deters the whole project, right? It could potentially be very costly when it comes to that.
Yeah, and that's something that's so dangerous. So when you talk about aligning leadership, I think the leadership is where a lot of the bad behavior starts, honestly. You will see executives now, they're worried about whose contract is going through when, who's staying on, who is in charge of different things. And sometimes you'll see, especially in a merger situation, less in an acquisition, you'll see people saying things like, okay, this is the way that we're going to do it in my group. And of course, the person on the other side is going, well, this is the way we're going to do it in my group. But they need to be able to work together. There has to be some sort of hierarchy or authority. One person probably needs to take a back seat as an advisory role to help with the transition, but they can't be left in control of things at the executive level. So you can't have two chief operating officers pulling in different directions, or two chief HR officers who are trying to implement different policies or have different backgrounds. There really needs to be an alignment there and clear messaging from the leadership. And you have to kill the us versus them mentality early. The more the leadership demonstrates that, the less problems that you'll have down the line.
Yeah, I was going to say, too many chiefs, not enough Indians. Is that what the
Yeah.
saying is? Yeah, when you get into those roles, and sometimes it is hard for people who have been in leadership roles, knowing like that there is change coming and it's unfamiliar to them. Sometimes you get a different side of people, right?
Yeah.
When they're afraid to like lose their job. So some things are unpredictable. But what we're here to just advise everyone is, look, the minute you start noticing it, and whether that doesn't necessarily have to mean like an exit, right? That could just mean
No.
have those conversations. Sometimes it does get to the point of an exit, but at least starting to have those conversations and make it clear that like we can't have this here, at all, which is a good sign. Alrighty. So next thing I wanted to ask Ryan about is kind of like, what is his one wish thing that he may wish that more executives understood about culture before a deal is signed? Anything that you've come across and seen in your experience that you kind of wish would have been told to you beforehand? Like you don't know what you don't know until you step into it. So just curious on that.
So again, I'm going to lean back on my military experience here. That's where a lot of my foundation comes from. And the three things that tie together into the one thing are the honesty, the transparency, and the visibility. I'll touch on the last one first. When you get executives who are going through mergers and acquisitions, they tend to disappear into boardrooms. They tend to disappear into conference rooms. They go on retreats to develop the mission and the vision for the new company, decide if there's going to be design changes. And everyone else is just expected to keep things running while they're off doing all of these very important things. And I don't want to downplay the importance of those, but the fact that it's not visible, it's not transparent, it doesn't feel honest because you don't know what's happening and you're just stuck wondering. I don't know if you've ever sent an email to someone and not heard back for a week and wondered, like, did I say something wrong? Did I do something wrong? Well, now multiply that times not seeing your CEO walking around the building for a month because he's off traveling and doing things in different places and locked in boardrooms and all that kind of thing. So that visibility is critical. Just even if it's walking around the office once or twice a week to say hi, see who's in their offices, see who's in their rooms, see who's in their cubicles or the open areas. Just be visible and make sure people know that you're there. That is the first and most important thing. The transparency and the honesty that come with that, the little conversations in those visible walkarounds, people will be incredibly honest with you. Am I going to have a job in a year? I heard somebody ask the CEO several companies ago that question while he was walking around. He's like, we're still we're not planning on downsizing or anything like that at this time. We're still having conversations. That wasn't an answer. That just injected more fear into that person, who then spread that fear to their group and to their friends in the coffee room, and then the entire building was just kind of down. As a leader myself, the most important thing that I've been able to do from an internal role within the operations, supply chain, procurement areas is be present, be visible. All of those areas already touch all the parts of the business. So if I can walk around and be one of those people that's doing that, making sure people are doing okay, taking a minute to pop into a friend's office and just see how they're doing, see how the group's doing, and then funnel that back up through leadership appropriately. So somebody else knows and can step in with a little bit of authority, be like, hey, you guys are going to be okay. We're going to figure this out. We're working on it. We're going to tell you stuff as soon as we have it. But the plan right now is business as usual, and we're going to keep going the way that we have been. And when we make the changes, they're going to be really well designed and really well implemented. That messaging right there is so much stronger than, well, we're still having conversations and we don't really know what a year from now is going to look like. That's the thing. It's just be visible and communicate.
Yeah, very true. And when your executives are hesitating, right, that is definitely what we would call nowadays a red flag. So
Yes.
I like that messaging. And I think naturally, even if you do communicate that to people, there are some people who are just still not going to believe you and still, work to leave. But sometimes that may or may not necessarily be a negative thing, just dependent upon who they are. And if there is someone who isn't on board to kind of see the M&A through, right, and help with the process and maybe get that experience under their belt, then maybe that was the right decision. But I do like that, and I like how it just comes back to being like fully transparent. A lot of times, even as a leader, you don't know what the future, like you can plan for it, but we still,
Yeah.
anything can really come up and happen, right? So it's very hard to like speak on it. I want my HR people to be like transparent, but maybe not overstep a little too much, right? If you kind of don't know, just leave it very basic, like how Ryan mentioned. I love the wording of just business as usual. And when change comes, we'll make sure we communicate that out to everyone and then just keep it going and let people make their own decisions from there. And so last question I wanted to pick Ryan's brain around is, on the HR side, and employees may not necessarily realize this, but a lot of times when a merger and acquisition deal goes through, most of the time we don't even get notified until it's announced, usually, or we get pulled in a few days before. So it's very fast, abrupt. Things have already been brewing. Decisions have already been made once it's announced. So there's not really much that we really have control over. But I want to kind of get your insight on when that does happen, because these transactions come through, they're very fast paced. How can leaders really advocate for their culture and like their people strategy in a fast paced transaction of that nature?
So the big thing is if you're going through a larger acquisition or merger, it's likely that you have senior vice presidents or VPs or chief HR officers within these organizations. Even if the front line is not involved in the preliminary conversations, I would be shocked if the senior leadership from HR was not involved. They have a critical role in this because, like Tiana said, the HR group is probably getting pulled in a little bit before everyone else. And of course, the rest of us in the building see that HR all disappeared into conference rooms for 2 days and we're going, what's going on? But at the same time, that chief HR person needs to be setting up the messaging within their own team. All right, team, here's what's going to happen. We've already discussed this with the CEO. This is what our approach is going to be. Here's the messaging that we want to get out to everyone. All these little pieces need to be tied together. And that chief HR officer has a critical role in that. They're such a linchpin. If they don't have a plan in place and they're asking their team to make the plan, then you're already starting off one step too late. If they have a plan, it doesn't have to be down to all the details, but it needs to be the framework. Here's your responsibility. Here's your responsibility. These are the things that you're going to be responsible for. If you give people things to do and it's clear and the expectations are clear, then they're going to be able to go and execute those things. And they're going to feel confident that you know what you're doing. So if you're in one of those roles, then my encouragement is have that there, have things for people to do. Be ready to hand out those little pieces of information that are going to help them be successful at their jobs, those clear expectations. To go with that, if you are in one of these situations and you find that your senior leadership hasn't, then you need to be that person. It doesn't matter what your role is. You could be the newest HR generalist specialist on the team, and you can still have an influence and say, you know what, I was thinking about this and I see this as a potential path forward. I like your feedback on this approach. That's an early sign of leadership. Somebody who can phrase it confidently, say, I see that no one has a direction. I have an idea. I'd like your feedback on it. I think it's a good direction. Let's refine it and see if we can make it work. That can trickle all the way back up and create that clarity at the higher levels that's going to make your organization successful. And people remember that you were the one in the room when everyone else was freaking out that knew what they were doing. And that's hugely important for your career and for your self-confidence because it will continue to come back to you.
Yeah, I would say don't be the chicken little, right? I think
No.
yeah, don't run around. I remember when I was younger in my career, such a good point from Ryan, because there used to be a joke around the office where some of our executives run around like a chicken with the head cut off, you know? So that respect level does get lost. So I think in this situation for all HR executives, you need to be not only an advocate for your team, but actually show good face in front of your team and encourage everyone. And I like to say if it's coming through, hey, look, let's take this as a challenge and let's work out as a team, regardless of what happens in the future. At least you have this under your belt, right? You can say you went through this. And I think when you're younger, just starting out in your career, sometimes you don't recognize the opportunity that is. And instead you get scared and naturally run and go to a company you may feel is safer or where you're more comfortable and complacent instead of taking on a challenge. So definitely encourage everyone to see everything through. I mean, from the merger and acquisition space, I think what we really wanted to communicate to everyone here is a lot of times that, it's bringing on more employees, it's implementing new systems, it's trying to standardize different systems, but there is a people aspect of this. And we need to just make sure we're taking care of the human side of things of our people. And then, proceeding and making sure everyone is successful from there. So
Yeah.
all good things. All righty, Ryan. Well, thank you so much for joining me
Thank
today.
you so
I'm
much
really
for having
excited to have you here. And glad to introduce Ryan to my network. Some of you all already know him, but for those of you who don't, please connect with him. He has really good things going on in the AI space. So I wanted to maybe give you the floor if you want to go through your AI company too as well.
So with my background in operations and procurement supply chain, I've decided to go into AI. I say that jokingly, but I've actually been working with AI for longer than most people have known that it existed. That's led me to understand how it works, how to implement it, how to guide others through selection of tools, setting up governance. And I have decided to strike out on my own to do that instead. So yeah, I'm excited to launch my new company at the end of this week and get myself out there for guiding executives on how to go through AI implementation, adoption, and come up with a roadmap.
Yes, perfect. And it's great platform, you all. So definitely connect with Ryan. Check out his AI company. Ping him with any questions you have. He will be attached to this post. But thank you so much for joining again. Such a pleasure having you. And then to everyone out there, I will see you all in another few weeks with another great episode.
Thanks, Deanna. Bye.